Good afternoon, everyone. Please pull in, please. As most of you know, my name is Kathy Lewis. I'm president of the Women's Republican Club of Naples Federated. We are so blessed and honored today to welcome Vice President Mike Pence, to have him with us. He is the keynote speaker later this evening for Students for Life of America. And Judy and Charlie Kupperman were able to work with his staff and get him to join us here this afternoon. So we're very honored for that. Thank you. I just want to make a couple of other thank yous, and then we'll get started with our program. I want to thank Carolyn Olson, who was very instrumental in helping with all the advance work. She's on Vice President Pence's team. I want to thank Brian Urso, John Clayton, and the Kalia Bay staff. Thank you very much. Most of you are familiar with Father Orsi of St. Agnes Catholic Church, and he's here to give the invocation.
You know, from what I know about the Vice President, I think he should be giving the invocation and not me. Thank you, sir, for your great Christian example. Let us pray. Father in heaven, you send righteous people among us to remind us of your love. We thank you for the gift of Vice President Mike Pence that you have brought to us this day. As a world leader, he speaks the truth regarding the sanctity of human life and the sacredness of marriage. He has given witness to you when in office and in his personal life. He reminds us that those who are in power over people are called to serve them. You call us to be people of integrity, and you commission our leaders to be role models for us and our nation, which is founded on Judeo-Christian principles. Let the words of the prophet Micah ring in the ears of your people and our leaders. Do what is right, love justice, and walk humbly with God. Let your son, Mike Pence, continue to be a strong advocate for biblical values and a reminder to us of who we are called to be, God's holy people. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Father Orsi. I would like to introduce Lieutenant James L. Lane. He is a Vietnam veteran, and this book is written about the Ia Drang battle in Vietnam, and Lieutenant James L. Lane is on the first page of this book. He was with the 2B7, which is the 2nd Battalion, 7th Cavalry. 450 men were surrounded by 2,000 Viet Cong for 3 days. It was one of the most savage and significant battles of the Vietnam War, and Mel Gibson made a movie about it. So please welcome Jim Lane, who's going to lead us in the pledge.
Please, join me. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much. Next, I have the pleasure to introduce Dr. Charles Kupperman. Most of you know him. He's a member of our club. He is well acquainted with Vice President Pence as they worked together in the West Wing, and their offices were near each other. So I'm going to hand the mic over to Charlie.
Well, I don't need to tell you what a great day it is having Vice President Pence with us. It is so great. This is a man of character, conviction, and courage. And I also don't need to tell you that the White House never has a dull day. And were it not for Vice President Pence on many of those dull days, we would be in a big world of heap and a big pile of trouble. In every Oval Office meeting, every Situation Room meeting concerning national security, Vice President Pence's advice, counsel, and analysis made an enormous difference in the policies that our country pursued while he was Vice President. He is a leader in every way, member of the House of Representatives, governor, the youngest governor in Indiana, and a Vice President. He understands what it takes to make a government work for the people, by the people. It's with great honor I present to you Vice President Mike Pence.
Well, hello, Florida. Thank you so much. Thank you to the Women's Republican Club of Naples. I am delighted to be here. It's a lot colder in Indiana right now. Thank you for such an incredibly warm welcome. And I also want to say nothing happens in the Republican Party in America without Republican women leaders. And we are grateful to each and every one of you. To Kathy Lewis, Judy Kupperman, Jean Mosher, thank you so much for building one of the most dynamic women's Republican clubs in America. You've made an incredible difference here in Florida, incredible difference in the life of the nation. Join me in thanking Kathy Lewis and the whole Women's Republican Club of Naples Federated. And I also, Abraham Lincoln said his only ambition in life was to be esteemed by people he esteemed. And I must tell you that the overly generous introduction from the former Deputy National Security Advisor means a great deal to me. Whatever he said of me is doubly true of Charlie Kupperman. He is a man who stood strong for our national security. He stood like a rock in the surf, unmovable, and always put the interest and security of America first. Charlie Kupperman, thank you for your distinguished service through all the years to the United States of America. But it's wonderful to be with you all. I really just came today to say thank you. Thank you for your support. Thank you for your prayers. Thanks for the extraordinary opportunity to have served as Vice President of the United States. It was the greatest honor of my life. And I want to thank the people of Naples and the Women's Republican Club for that. You know, my life has changed a lot since the last time we were together. Karen and I moved home to Indiana. We bought 5 acres and a pond. I bought a riding mower, John Deere 54-inch deck, 0 turn radius, 25 horsepower, just in case some of the guys in the room are taking notes. Somebody told me the other day, they said, you always talk about your lawnmower, and I said, yeah, and he goes, well, they say young men talk about their cars. More mature men talk about their lawnmowers. I didn't know that. But it's been great to be home. One of the great things about no longer being Vice President is you get to drive your own car, Charlie. One of the bad parts is you get to pay for your own gas. But one of the best things that's happened to us in our lives is that in the last 2 years, our son and his family and our daughter and their family have made us grandparents 3 times over. And it's just been incredible. Karen and I, as I wrote a book, some of you have a chance to take a look at it later, I'd be honored. I wrote in the book that Karen and I figured out that the reason we had kids was to have grandkids. My son's a fighter pilot in the United States Marine Corps. He's a captain. He's got a 2-year-old. We'll be celebrating her birthday next week, and he's stationed in Yuma, Arizona. Little Avery Grace, we got a term for her. It comes out of fighter pilot experience. All thrust, no vector. But some military people understood that one. But it's, the other one is that we literally had, I was telling Kathy a minute ago, we traveled to California. I was supposed to be in South Carolina about a month ago. We traveled to California because my daughter went into labor. And Karen and I hustled out to California where they're stationed. My son-in-law is a lieutenant in the United States Navy and flies for our military. And more importantly, my daughter writes for the Daily Wire, which is an incredible publication. I'm incredibly proud of her. But so little Etta Rose was born, and she's perfect. And but literally, this is a true story. So we're FaceTiming with my daughter-in-law, who was pregnant, who was 8 months pregnant. We were FaceTiming with her and showing her the baby, and that was great. And an hour after the FaceTime signed off, she started going a month early. So if you got anybody in your family who's almost there, be careful about FaceTiming, because we ended up jumping in the car and driving to Yuma, Arizona, where little Elena Marie was born. And we're just incredibly blessed. Karen is like a pig in mud. Probably doesn't work outside Indiana, but I mean, that's a good thing. She's got a loving the grandmother thing. And, and I think about it seriously. I mean, all the blessings I've had in my life, I wrote about in that book over on the table. That, to represent my hometown in the Congress of the United States for 12 years, to be governor of my home state for 4 years, and to be your Vice President of the United States of America. Honestly, I think all of those blessings, Kathy, what are the odds that I would also be grandfather to the 3 most beautiful little girls ever born in the history of the world? Statistically, what are the odds of that? And we also learned a very sublime truth since we left office. It's that you can hold all those positions for your state and for your nation. You can represent America around the world, but after it's all over, you're still going to wait 30 minutes for a table at Olive Garden on Saturday night. Are you with me? You can applaud that if you want. It literally happened our first year out of office. We're out on the bench. I may have been complaining, texting to my daughter. Say, how's it going tonight? It's a big date night with Mom. Olive Garden. And she said, I may have complained. I said, I've been out here for 25 minutes waiting. And my daughter, without missing a beat, texted me back. She said, with a little American flag, and she said, "That's America, Dad. And don't you ever forget it." And you know what? She was right. We had different plans for these 4 years, but I must tell you, the opportunity to be back home again in Indiana, to be back amongst the people, to traveled across 35 states in the last 2 years and tried to help to do my part to retire Nancy Pelosi once and for all, and then one of the greatest joys of my life. Well, it hasn't been all bad. And I just want to say thank you for the support you provided to our administration. It's incredible to think about what we accomplished when we put conservative Republican principles into practice. Think about it. The largest increase in our national defense since the days of Ronald Reagan. We had a commander-in-chief who unleashed our military, who took down the ISIS caliphate, took down their leader, and the most dangerous terrorist in the world, Qasem Soleimani, is gone. We stood with our allies and stood up for our enemies as never before. And if the world knew nothing else, the world knew this. America stood with Israel when we moved our American embassy to Jerusalem. And here at home, after 8 years that saw the slowest economic recovery since the Great Depression, We passed historic tax relief. We rolled back more regulation than any administration in American history. We unleashed American energy and became a net exporter of energy for the first time in 75 years, and the American economy boomed. Beyond all of that, maybe of greatest consequence in the life of the nation, is that we were part of an administration that saw to the appointment of 300 men and women to our federal courts at every level, including Justice Neil Gorsuch, Justice Brett Kavanaugh, and Indiana's Justice Amy Coney Barrett. And as a father just reflected, I have to tell you, it is the greatest honor of my life to have been a small part of the administration that appointed 3 of the justices that overturned Roe versus Wade and gave America a new beginning for the right to life. So there's incredible progress that we made at home and abroad for our liberties, our security, our prosperity, and our values. But I hardly have to tell the friends gathered here how times have changed. I mean, for all the blessings of my life in the last 2 years, I have to tell you, it's been very difficult to literally watch an administration whose agenda seemed to be to weaken America every day at home and abroad. Their agenda was nothing more than to undo the successful policies of the Trump-Pence administration, and they've been at it from day one. I mean, on the first day in office, President Biden ended construction of the border wall and dismantled the policies that had reduced illegal immigration and asylum abuse by 90%, creating the worst border crisis in history. After everything that we had done to support families and businesses during the worst pandemic in 100 years was done on a bipartisan basis, they passed a party line vote of $1.9 trillion and lit the fuse on the worst inflation in 40 years that's besetting American families. And then, of course, there was that disastrous withdrawal in Afghanistan that emboldened the enemies of freedom. And now Russia's on the march in Eastern Europe, and China continues to menace across the Asia Pacific. And let me say a word about that with a distinguished veteran like Jim in the room. Nothing in that disastrous withdrawal will ever diminish the service and sacrifice of men and women who defended this country in Afghanistan all those 30 years. The truth is, now more than ever, we need renewed Republican leadership at the national level. 2022 was a good start. And I have to tell you, seeing Kevin McCarthy take that gavel after an uneventful vote for Speaker of the House. I saw him last Friday. I was in Texas. I told him, I said, Kevin, you know, I served in Congress for 12 years. It seemed longer. I said, I got to tell you, I said, Kevin, when you planted your feet and said, I'm not going anywhere, we're going to stand firm, we're going to get this done, and we're going to deliver for the American people. And Speaker Kevin McCarthy and House Republicans are already delivering, and I couldn't be more proud. But now we have more work to do, and Naples will loom large in that. You know, the truth is that you all see a lot of people on a regular basis down here. And you're always incredibly generous. You extend incredible hospitality, and I want to thank you for that. Because this is no ordinary time in the life of our nation. I truly do believe that the direction of this very country will likely be decided in the next year and a half. If the Democrats in some way are able to continue the policies that are driving our nation deeper in debt, driving our economy to its knees, and weakening America's place in the world, is somehow they're to have that leadership affirmed, I think this nation will go places that'll be unrecognizable in the American that we grew up in. But the thing I want to encourage you with today is just the word that I have better hopes for this country. You know, during all my years as governor, vice president, and as Congress, you know, my opinion of your national government went down. But my opinion of the American people went up. I mean, everywhere I went, I never failed to be inspired by Americans, just as I am today. I mean, to be out among the American people, particularly among the men and women that wear the uniform of the United States, is to be inspired. And it seems like when things are at their worst, Americans are at their best. You know, I would travel to places where hurricanes had struck, just like that terrible storm that just rolled through southwest Florida. And this is an area that's been very special to our family for a very long time. Karen and I came down over the Thanksgiving holiday to serve a few meals and to pray with some families. We were there at Fort Myers Beach, which, as I said to Kath a few moments ago, I've been to war zones that look like a war zone to me. We traveled out to Sanibel Island with people that had let us stay at their homes, and we'd seen those beaches where our kids grew up, and where we'd made so many memories, as so many Americans do in this special place in which you live. But what was most moving to me was not the devastation, but the generosity. Because we gathered at a couple of different churches and we saw perfect strangers who had driven from all across the country to serve a meal, to give a word of encouragement, to clean up a yard, to help people put their lives back together. And it's not rare. I mean, when things are at their worst, Americans are at their best. I've seen it over and over again. I saw it in the aftermath of September 11th. I was a first-year member of Congress at the time, Charlie. You remember that day. And what inspired me after the terror of that day was the lines that circled the block outside recruiting stations in every big city and small town in the country. Americans step up. And I know they will this year. I know the American people know the stakes in this coming election. They know that the wounds in our economy, the wounds in our credibility in the world are all self-inflicted. And that the challenge we have today is just to have government as good as our people. Government that's as principled, as committed not just to this generation, but to future generations. It's committed to opportunity and prosperity for every American, regardless of race or creed or color, and is committed to the ideals and the values and the liberties on which this nation's prosperity has been built. And I know we will. So I just want to encourage all of you in the days that remain between now and a year from this November is do everything you can to support the men and women that come here through Naples. Encourage them with that word. Be generous where you can. And just understand that if all of us do all we need to do, I know the best days for the greatest nation on earth are yet to come. Because I have faith. I have faith in the American people that when we hold the banner of American ideals and freedom high, the American people will rally to our cause. I have faith in the American founding, the principles enshrined in our Declaration, in our Constitution. And finally, as Father began, so I'll close. I have faith that God isn't done with America yet. And that if we will simply rededicate ourselves to care for one another in the way that He calls us to, and recognize that we are one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, then I know the future will be bright and we will deliver for our children and our grandchildren an America more prosperous, more free than the one to which we came. So help us God. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me today. And God bless you.
Vice President President Pence will be over here to sign books. There's a special order to how it's being done.